G'day. All right. What I thought I might do today is I'm going to run through the training pack, a training pack that we put together just recently on the building styles and how to use them as comparable. So well, I didn't get a chance to do this last month. So I thought what I'll do is I'll record this little video. We'll stick it up inside the inner circle here as well. For you to have a bit of a look at. So really what I wanted to do, because we've had a few people who've been submitting some feasibilities to us, which is fantastic. Please keep going with that. That's great. That's what we're here for. We're happy to review your deals for you and give some opinions. But we had a few people who were maybe looking at, for instance, a bungalow, and then what they were doing was their comparable data was ranch properties or Tudors or colonials. And it's really difficult to be able to do that when you're actually comparing a different style of building together to try and get an idea. So, and what I want to do, so let me run through the styles, and I'll just put some of the main ones that we see. Now there's a whole bunch of different ones, and what you're going to see is the different areas of the US that you are looking in are going to have different types of styles. So if you're more south, if you're in the southernmost states, particularly if you're across maybe South Texas, Southern California, New Mexico, those sort of areas, you're going to get a very Spanish style. So you could even get Spanish villa style properties. You could get, that's sort of with, courtyards and things like that. If you're a little bit more towards, say, New Orleans or something, they've got a very French sort of look. So you're going to get some very French styles. Throughout the northern parts, you're going to get a lot of more of the English styles that are better for the cold weather, the snow, and things like that. So it will certainly differ depending on where you are. What I wanted to go through, let me just go through some of the main ones, and that way you can have a bit of a look when you're doing your feasibilities next to whether you're comparing apples with apples, so to speak. So first off, I'll start with a ranch. Now, a ranch, they call it a ranch. Essentially, what a ranch style property is a property with one level. So there's no upstairs. It's all based on one level. A lot of Australian properties would be classified, if there was such thing as a ranch, maybe. They can be quite spacious. They don't have to be small. Depending on where you are, they can be. Ranches in the city areas tend to be relatively small properties because there's not a lot of space on the block to spread out too much and to still give you a relatively good sized block. So the ranch property is probably one of the more cheaper styles. Because they're generally smaller, and this is generalising. This is the sort of the BC class neighbourhoods. They're generally smaller, maybe less than 1,000 square foot properties, all on one level, but they can actually be quite sought after. There are a certain buyer class that are going to deliberately or specifically look for ranch properties. Now, people who don't want stairs, the elderly, anyone with a disability or literally people who are just not interested in having stairs in a property will look for the ranch style property. Now, a ranch may or may not have a basement. It doesn't change the fact of it being a ranch, but you can get a lot of ranch properties that don't have basements. So because again, the whole idea of a ranch, the best advantage, I guess, of the ranch style property is that there are no stairs. So therefore, you don't have the stairs going down into a basement as well. So they're often on a crawl space, which when you hear the term, if you see a term crawl, that means that essentially it's like a timber floor on studs, not studs, and you can get underneath the property. So you can literally crawl underneath, and that's where the word crawl space comes from. There's enough room between the floor and the stumps to get underneath the property. Or they'll be on what they call a slab, which of course is a concrete slab, and we see that a lot here in Australia as well, especially the more newer properties. So that's a ranch style property. If you're looking at a ranch, then what I'd be doing is trying to make sure you're comparing with other ranch type properties in the neighbourhood that you're looking at to get you a good comparable. Okay. Once again, your realtor can help you with that if you like, or alternatively, you can just look up and see what other ranch style properties have been sold or are for sale in the area. Now, the next style, which is very, very common, particularly in the northern, all the way through the northern suburbs of the US, is what they call a bungalow. Now, a bungalow is essentially a property which generally does have another story, but generally what it is the stairs that go up into another room rather than another entire floor. Okay, so What you've got here is you've got a downstairs, you're going to have kitchen, you're going to have bathrooms, you're going to have living rooms, all downstairs, most likely bedrooms. 2 or 3 bedrooms can be downstairs. And then upstairs, you go up the stairs to a bedroom. And it could be the master bedroom is upstairs, and there might even be a bathroom upstairs and a walk-in closet or walk-in wardrobe, as we would call it. That might be upstairs in like a master suite. But in essence, that would be called a bungalow, okay? Now, this does differ from the other 2-story properties that I'll go through in a minute. Now, bungalows are the most popular style of properties. They're a little more sought after than the ranch properties, so they bring a slightly higher return than the ranch properties. Generally, we'll be looking to have a basement in a bungalow. The bungalow most likely, not necessarily, but most likely won't have attic space, because essentially oftentimes what the bungalow is the attic space has been turned into a bedroom. Okay, so that's why you've got this upstairs room rather than it being an attic. So the people who are going to not have an attic space are going to be wanting some sort of storage, so they use the basements. Okay, so that's your bungalow. You'll get a lot of those. Now these is where from here on in the next 2 styles that I'm going to go through just really quickly. I'm just going to keep this neat. Make sure you've got your book. It would have come through here. So building styles. Make sure you've got a copy of that. If you haven't, reach out to us. We can get you a copy out and we can also send this through to you in a PDF format if you need it. So you can get a copy of that. All the details are in there, so you can go through this in a lot more detail. The next style is what we would call a colonial. Now, this is very much like an English colonial style property, where essentially what you've got is it's 2 complete floors. You've got living rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms. Upstairs, you've got living rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens. Downstairs, the floor space downstairs will be about the same as the floor space upstairs. Okay, so it is 2 distinct floors on these properties. Generally, from above, when you're thinking of colonials, think of squares. So from looking at the property, it's going to be a square, a big box. You're going to have generally, and again, this is just a complete generalization, but you're going to see that the door is in the middle of the property with the same number of windows on either side, and that's a really classic colonial style property. Now, colonials are a lot more sought after, a lot more expensive. So this is where you want to be careful comparing a colonial property with a bungalow. Okay, the colonial will certainly bring more money, and if the property you're looking at is a colonial, then that's great, right? The colonials will bring more money. For owner-occupier properties, the colonials probably are a slightly better choice, because more people are going to wanting to be getting into a colonial. Okay, that's more. They're going to be more common for owner-occupiers. They're larger properties, so you want to be a little careful of your rehab budget in a colonial. You're more likely to get 2,000, 2,500, even 3,000 or bigger square foot properties in a colonial. Okay, the colonials could be either 4, 5, 6 bedroom properties. So you want to have a look at that. Some colonials could have been turned into duplexes. So there'll be an upstairs and a downstairs apartment now, and it was originally a large colonial. Okay, so you can convert colonials into multifamilies. Remembering you're going to need to get the approvals from the city. But that is possible to do that. Alternatively, it is possible to convert duplexes back into single-family colonials. Okay, if you're looking for owner-occupiers, so they're all options for you for colonials. Now, the 4th style that I wanted to just go through, touch base on quickly, that you'll see is a Tudor. And again, these are very similar to the English-style Tudors. Now, where you're talking a colonial, when I said squares, for a Tudor, think of triangles. Okay, so the roof is going to be a very steep triangle. They're going to find that that's how what it does is it's very good for snow areas, because the snow will fall off the roof and doesn't sit on the roof, doesn't cause a lot of damage, and that's where I guess the design came from, Europe originally. So the Tudor, very similar to the colonial, complete upstairs. The Tudors will often have attic spaces because the roof is on such a high pitch. There's area up the top that you can't fit a room in, but they'll make it into an attic space. So that gives the opportunity to have an attic inside the Tudors. They're probably most likely going to have basements, and the colonials will most likely have basements. It'll be very rare that you would see a colonial or a Tudor, particularly in the northern states of the US, on a crawl or a slab. It's pretty rare. So most of them are going to have the basements. And when you're getting up into this size sort of property, you would want to be look at finishing the basement, putting the flooring in, putting ceilings in, putting walls in the basement to make it so they can use it as separate rooms. Tudors and colonials, I guess, can be a little more close in comparison. So if you're going to compare a Tudor and you're using a colonial as a comparable data, look, it can be done, I guess, because they both can be pretty sought after. The thing is that they're going to target different markets. Certain people are going to love colonials and they're going to want a colonial. Others love the look of the Tudor and they're going to be looking for a Tudor. So the same buyer may not necessarily be wanting to buy the same property if you've got one of each, but as far as comparable data, look, it's similar. But to be honest, I would prefer that if you I prefer to stick to the same type. So for a colonial property, all my comparable data are colonial properties that are for sale or have sold. If I'm looking at a Tudor, then I'm going to be comparing it with Tudors. So, you know, that'll give you a quick breakdown and in order of expense. They generally go like that with colonials and Tudors, very similar. What'll happen with the difference between a colonial and a Tudor will actually be more neighbourhood based. Okay, so you're going to get certain neighbourhoods that Tudors are really popular. So a colonial in that area won't bring as much money as a Tudor. Whereas you'll get another area where there's a lot of colonials, and colonials are very popular, meaning they'll bring more money than a Tudor. So you want to have a bit of a look at that. Once again, the other thing just to bear in mind when you're talking about building styles is manufacture. So if the property is a brick property versus a frame, timber frame, or a laminate, you're certainly got to be very careful comparing that. I mean, if you've got a frame property, then I would be comparing it with other timber frame properties rather than comparing it with a double brick or a brick property. With a brick, you want to be looking at, so brick bungalow, I'd be comparing with brick bungalows, okay? Brick colonial, you'd be comparing with brick colonial. If you're talking a frame, a timber frame Tudor style, compare it with other timber frame Tudor styles. You want to make sure you're comparing apples with apples. It's going to give you the best opportunity to make sure that your comparable data is accurate and you're not either overestimating or underestimating the price of the property, which either can be quite dangerous. So have a look at that. Make sure you've got your booklet. If you haven't, reach out to us through members@stardynamic.com.au. Send us a message. We can send it out to you if you didn't get it. Alternatively, we can send you a PDF as well, or if you would like the PDF, even if you did get it, just reach out to us and we can send that through to you. All right, guys, have a great night. See ya.